Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at two pretty big players in the tech world, Palantir and AMD,
Oh, yeah.
and how these two companies are tackling this AI revolution, but in totally different ways. We'll be looking at this great article called Palantir's Plunge and AMD's Hidden Edge, Navigating Volatility and Opportunity in Tech.
Oh.
And the subtitle is Why Palantir's Drop is Overhyped and AMD's FPGA Tech Could Fuel a $200 B AI Revolution.
Yeah, that subtitle really grabbed you.
I know. So are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, great. So let's start with Palantir.
Okay.
Their stock has taken a bit of a dive recently, and I was kind of hoping you could give us some insight into what happened there.
Well, there are a couple of things I think that spooked investors. The first was this proposal to cut the U.S. defense budget.
Oh, yeah.
That always makes people nervous. And then second, you had Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp. He announced that he's going to be selling some of his shares, like a portion of his shares, worth about $1.2 billion.
Yeah, I can see why people would be a little anxious about that, but the article that we're looking at suggests that this might be a little bit of an overreaction.
Yeah.
So what do they say? What makes them think that?
Well, when you kind of dig a little deeper, it's not as bad as it looks. Take those defense budget cuts, for example. The initial proposal was something like 8%. But analysts are saying that it'll probably end up closer to 3 or 4%.
Oh, wow.
After all the, political back and forth.
Okay, so less of a slash and more of a trim.
Yeah, exactly. And more importantly, only about half of Palantir's revenue comes from government contracts anyway.
Okay.
And they're not just selling, typical defense equipment either.
Right.
They're providing these AI-driven systems, and, those are really important in this global AI arms race that's going on.
Yeah, it's like even if budgets tighten up, their AI expertise is in such high demand that they're almost indispensable.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's not just boots on the ground anymore. It's the future of warfare, and Palantir is selling that future.
Wow.
And then if we go back to Alex Karp selling his shares, I mean, sure, $1 billion, that sounds massive.
It does.
But insider selling, that's actually pretty common, especially after a company's stock has gone up a lot. And remember, Palantir stock went from $6 to $120.
Wow.
So, it's natural for somebody to want to cash in some of those gains.
So it's not necessarily a sign that he's losing faith in the company?
Right. And what's really interesting is that Palantir's commercial business, that's actually their biggest growth engine.
Oh, wow.
Their platforms, AIP and Foundry, those help businesses use AI, and those are seeing huge adoption. They're projecting something like a 40% revenue surge just next quarter.
Wow. So the short-term stock dip might just be a little blip on the radar compared to their long-term potential.
Yeah, that's the takeaway here. I think you focus too much on the short term and you might miss the bigger picture.
Yeah, I like that.
Now let's move on to AMD. This is a company that's kind of quietly making moves in the AI world.
So while Palantir is making waves in applying AI to really complex problems, AMD is quietly building the foundation for AI to be everywhere.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So AMD is focusing on this technology called FPGAs, which stands for Field Programmable Gate Arrays.
Okay.
These are really interesting. They're kind of like the secret weapon for what they call AI at the edge.
Okay, I've heard of edge computing, but I need a little refresher. What does that mean exactly in the context of AI?
Sure. So AI at the edge, that means the AI is happening right on the device itself. So think of things like drones, satellites, self-driving cars, even your smart appliances.
Oh.
It's not happening in some massive data center far away.
Okay.
And FPGAs are perfect for this because they're really good at handling AI inference.
Can you remind me what inference is again?
Okay, so think of it like this. Training an AI is kind of like teaching a dog a new trick.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time, data, and resources. But once the dog learns that trick, it can perform it over and over again without needing that same level of, intensive training.
Right.
Inference is the dog actually performing the trick. It's the AI using what it's learned to make decisions in real time.
Okay, so for the listener, this means faster, more responsive AI in their devices.
Right.
So think instant language translation on your phone.
Yes.
Or a smart fridge that actually anticipates what you need.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And here's the thing. The market for this AI at the edge is projected to be worth over $200 billion by 2030.
Wow.
That's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And AMD is setting themselves up to be a major player.
So what are they doing to get ahead in this market?
Well, they did something really smart. They acquired Xilinx,
Okay.
which was the leading company in this FPGA technology.
Wow.
And that gave them access to this modular chiplet platform.
Split.
Yeah, meaning they can build these highly customizable AI solutions. It's like having building blocks for AI.
Oh,
So they're not limited to one-size-fits-all chips.
That's really smart. That means they can tailor their tech to fit specific needs, and that gives them a leg up on the competition.
Exactly. And for a really impressive example of what they can do, think about this. AMD's FPGAs are now powering SpaceX's next-generation satellites.
Wow.
Talk about cutting-edge technology.
AI-powered satellites. That's amazing.
Reaching for the stars, literally.
Yeah, that's incredible. So AMD is kind of like this sleeping giant in the AI world. But how do they stack up against companies like NVIDIA, who seem to be all about those massive data centers?
That's a great question, and it kind of highlights a difference in strategy.
Okay.
You see, AMD's CEO, Lisa Su, she's laser focused on AI inference, which is what happens at the edge.
Right.
Whereas NVIDIA is all in on AI training, which requires those really powerful data centers.
Okay, so they're targeting different parts of the AI ecosystem.
Exactly.
It's like NVIDIA builds the gym where the AI gets buff, and then AMD equips the athletes to compete in the real world.
That's a perfect analogy. I like that. And AMD's approach, it offers some advantages.
Oh.
First, they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're diversified.
That's always smart to spread your risk.
Right. And then there's cost efficiency. FPGAs are much more energy efficient than the GPUs that NVIDIA focuses on.
Okay.
Which is really attractive to companies that are, watching their spending.
I see your point. Being able to do more with less is always attractive. But NVIDIA is still kind of the 800-pound gorilla in AI. Can AMD really compete with that?
They can.
Yeah.
And here's why. Remember that Xilinx acquisition?
Oh, yeah.
That gave them like a 5 to 10-year head start.
Wow.
On competitors like Intel when it comes to this FPGA technology.
So that's a huge lead.
Yeah. And in the tech world, a decade, that's a lifetime.
Yeah. It sounds like AMD has a real shot at becoming a major force in AI.
They do. And what's really interesting is that their success, it's not just about having the best chips.
Okay.
It's about understanding, where the value is in AI.
You keep mentioning inference. And I think it would be good if you could help our listener understand why that's so important. Why should they care about inference versus training?
Okay, so it's all about how AI is being used in the real world. Remember that dog analogy?
Yeah.
Training is important, but the real magic happens when the dog actually performs the trick.
Right.
That's inference. That's using the trained AI to make decisions and take action.
Okay.
And AMD is kind of betting that the future of AI is going to be less about those big data centers and more about bringing AI to everyday devices, making them smarter, more responsive, more helpful.
So it's not just about creating the models, it's about how those models are used in our daily lives.
Exactly.
And AMD is betting big on that shift.
Yeah, think about it. We're moving towards a world where AI is going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
In our homes, our cars, our cities.
Right.
And that means we need technology that can handle that massive demand for inference.
Right.
But in a way that's powerful and sustainable. And that's where AMD comes in.
You're really making me rethink how I view this whole AI landscape. It's not just about the big data center players anymore. It's about the companies that are enabling AI to reach its potential in the real world.
I think that's a great insight. And it raises a question for investors. What kind of companies are you betting on? Are you looking at companies building the infrastructure for training or the ones that are enabling widespread adoption through inference?
That's a really good question. It seems like both approaches have their merits.
Yeah.
But understanding the difference between training and inference could be really key to making smart decisions about investing in the AI space.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about AMD and their focus on this edge computing. But how does Palantir fit into all of this?
Well, remember we talked about how Palantir specializes in these AI-driven systems?
Yeah.
Particularly for the military.
Right.
That whole selling the future of warfare thing.
Yeah, their work with the military and AI, that definitely stuck with me.
Think about what that really means. It's not just building models that analyze data. It's about deploying those models in real time in these critical situations.
Yeah.
Making split-second decisions on the battlefield, for instance.
Oh, wow.
That's inference.
So even though they're not focusing on things like consumer devices like AMD, they're still pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI in the real world.
Exactly. They're tackling some of the most challenging problems out there.
Yeah.
Especially in defense and intelligence. And their expertise in using AI for those problems is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
That's why, despite this recent market volatility, their long-term potential is so interesting. They're not just another AI company. They're pioneers in actually deploying AI in these complex, high-stakes situations.
You know, I'm starting to see Palantir in a whole new light now. It's not just about the financials or their government contracts.
Yeah.
It's about the value they're creating by really pushing the boundaries of AI in the real world.
That's right. And if we look at both Palantir and AMD, even though they have these different approaches, they do have something in common.
What's that?
They're both focused on using AI to solve real-world problems.
It's not just about the technology itself. It's about the vision behind it, the problems it solves, the impact that it has on the world.
You got it. And I think that's something that investors should really keep in mind. Don't just look at the hype or the latest, technological advancements.
Yeah.
Look for companies that have a clear understanding of how AI can be used to create real value and solve real problems.
That's a great point, because it's easy to get caught up in the hype cycle, but ultimately the companies that will succeed are the ones that can bridge the gap between the potential of AI and its practical application in the world.
Absolutely.
It's really fascinating to see how these two companies are approaching AI, from such different angles, but both are focused on making a real impact on the world. This has been a great deep dive. I feel like I'm starting to see the AI world with a whole new level of clarity.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And this is really just the beginning of this whole AI revolution. We're still in those early stages, and the possibilities are really limitless.
It's a little overwhelming, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly inspiring. I can't wait to see what the future holds for AI and how these companies will shape it.
Me too. It's going to be quite a journey. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about Palantir's ups and downs in the market, and then AMD's quiet rise. We talked about that key difference between AI training and inference.
Right.
And why it's so important to focus on those real-world applications. So before we wrap up, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with today?
That's a great question. I think the biggest takeaway is that in the world of tech investing, especially when you're dealing with something as transformative as AI, it's crucial to look beyond the short-term noise and focus on the long-term vision.
Yeah, don't get distracted by the headlines. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Exactly. Both Palantir and AMD, they're prime examples of this.
Right.
Palantir might be facing some headwinds right now.
Yeah.
But their core mission to use AI for decision-making in really complex environments, that's more relevant than ever.
It is.
And AMD, with their focus on AI inference and all their smart acquisitions,
yeah,
they're setting themselves up to be a major player in AI for years to come.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But, I do want to add one more thought.
Okay.
I think it's important for investors to remember that volatility doesn't always equal risk. Sometimes the biggest rewards come from riding out those ups and downs.
Yeah.
And just staying focused on the long game.
That reminds me of that classic saying, time in the market beats timing the market.
Exactly. And when it comes to tech investing, that's definitely true. You have to be able to look past the noise and focus on that long-term vision.
This whole conversation has been so insightful. I'm already thinking about, how AI is going to shape the world, and I'm excited to see how Palantir and AMD are a part of that.
Me too. It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners have too.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me on this journey.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Always fun to talk about this stuff with you.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of technology innovation and the future. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions.
Yeah, and don't forget to keep an eye on those long-term trends. That's where the real opportunities are.
Absolutely. So until next time, happy investing, everyone.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how these two companies are coming at this AI thing from such different directions, but they're both all about making a real difference in the world. This has been such a great deep dive. I feel like I'm finally starting to get what AI is all about.
I know, right? It's pretty exciting. And it's only just the beginning of this whole AI revolution. We're really just getting started, and the possibilities are just mind-blowing. Yeah, it's a little bit overwhelming, to be honest, but it's also incredibly inspiring. I mean, I can't wait to see what's coming next for AI and how companies like these will shape it.
Me too. It's going to be an awesome ride.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot today.
We have.
Palantir's kind of, roller coaster ride in the market, AMD's quiet climb to the top, that difference between training AI and using it, inference, and why focusing on real-world stuff is so important. But before we finish up, what's the one big thing you want people to remember from today?
That's a good question. I think the biggest takeaway is that for tech investors, especially when you're dealing with something as big as AI, it's so important to ignore all the short-term craziness and really focus on the long game.
Totally. Don't get caught up in headlines. Keep your eyes on the big picture.
Exactly. And Palantir and AMD, they're perfect examples of that.
They are.
Palantir might be going through some tough times right now.
Yeah.
But their whole mission, to use AI to make decisions in really tough situations, I think that's never been more important. And AMD focusing on inference and making all those smart moves, they're going to be a huge deal in AI for years to come.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I just want to add one more thing.
Sure.
It's important to remember that just because things are changing a lot, it doesn't mean it's risky. Sometimes the best rewards come from riding those waves and sticking with it for the long haul.
That's like that old saying, right? Time in the market beats timing the market.
Yes. And with tech, that's so true. You got to ignore all the noise and focus on the big picture.
This has been so insightful. I'm already thinking about how AI is going to change everything. And I'm excited to see how Palantir and AMD play their part.
Same here. It's going to be wild.
This deep dive has been incredible. Thanks so much for coming on this journey with me.
Of course. Anytime. It's always fun to chat with you about this stuff.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into tech the future and all that amazing stuff. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions.
And remember, keep an eye on those long-term trends.
Yeah.
That's where the real gold is.
You got it. So until next time, happy investing, everybody.